All right, good evening and welcome back to the Footballtribe channel. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. Welcome back to yet another live broadcast on your favorite football updates channel. It's a pleasure to be back with you guys this evening, where we're going to be speaking at the latest from the world of transfers and football in general, because plenty has been happening today, and yeah, so that's what we'll get to discuss. And hopefully you'll stay with us for the long haul as we go through most of it. So, before we get it all started, I wish to say thank you to every single one of you that managed to join our broadcast in the morning. Dennis Jokes, Maestro Pedri, for the first time joining us on Footballtribe, Yuji, Ronaldo, Agafanov becoming a usual suspect, Royo Tampan, and LFC LFC MX4. Then I think what's his name? I'm forgetting. He goes by the name. Okay, yes, Black Orichan, Taman Taus, Mariam Nalmasi, and every single one of you that joined us for that morning broadcast. Kungo Yolo there, Makula, thank you so much, and every single one of you that managed to catch that morning broadcast in which we discussed plenty of things, because that broadcast went on for 2 hours, by the way. It lasted the whole 2 hours while we were here speaking. Everything, Lionel Messi's suspension, Viktor Gyokeres' medical, Alexander Isak. We spoke about, the preview for the Liverpool, the preview for the Liverpool AC Milan game, and everything in that line. But anyways, allow me get our audios tested so that we can get into the thick of this evening's conversation, because there is a plenty for us to look forward to in as far as the discussion is concerned for this particular evening. So for those of you just joining us, welcome to the Footballtribe channel. Like I said, Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect, and it's good to be back. Good to be back, really. Apologies, we're just having our audio testing just to make sure everything does check out, so that we don't miss out on any single thing in terms of our audios. So that's a norm that we've taken on to do because of the experiences from the past, where sometimes our audios were not good. So yeah, that's why we do that. So we will be speaking about Viktor Gyokeres. He's been unveiled as a new Arsenal player. A lot of excitement and buzzing around the Arsenal fan base. We will speak about Liverpool because they lost their game to AC Milan in that preseason friendly in Hong Kong. Yes, so then we'll talk about Arsenal's game against Newcastle. That game is coming tomorrow at 2:30 p.m. East African time. Of course, like I said, it will come a little too early for Viktor Gyokeres, but for the first time, and I think this is interesting to mention, for the first time, Arsenal have signed the player and announced him on the same day. They did not have to drag this one on. They did not have to make fans wait for ages, wondering when the announcement will be. Will it take 3 days? Will it take a week? Will it take 2 weeks? Because they are capable of doing that, and they've done that in the past. So for the first time, they signed the player signed his contracts, paperwork, and etc. And yeah, they concluded the deal. They announced the player on the same day. So and that has gone through, so which was quite impressive to say the least. But I mean, there's always a first time for everything, and indeed that was the first time we are seeing that. Of course, plenty has been said from the player side. Andre Bata speaking about the signing, and a lot of people, we are now privy to what sort of went on behind the scenes in terms of negotiations to try and get this deal done. What were the hiccups? Because we started the summer shouting to you that Arsenal's priority was to sign Benjamin Sesko, which did not change until sometime, in I think mid-June, late June, around there, he was Mikel Arteta's preference. So yeah, it was all true the way we stated it, but things shifted when Andre Bata also came in, because that was a significant moment in this transfer window. he wasn't really opposed to the entirety of ideas that he found within the Arsenal recruitment team. He simply had to embrace some and then also have his fair share of opinion in regards to why he thought otherwise on certain deals. So it's only prudent for us to sort of brief you on that in regards to how everything has spun out. So, for example, we'll start things off at Arsenal. The players finally arrived. Viktor Gyokeres put pen to paper on a 5-year contract, 27 years of age, a very capable goal scorer, very eager to be part of this team, and that kind of thing. Deal is finally wrapped up after what felt like ages of going back and forth, the speculation, the anticipation, the anxiety, the agony, the supposed tears, the emotional breakdown with his father, and everything to do with that line really. And I think Arsenal fans have gone through some sort of an escapade of emotions when it comes to you being living with the anxiety of whether this deal was going to be wrapped up. At some point, there were reports that it could fall through. Man United trying to hijack the deal. They had been offered that opportunity. They couldn't take it on. The player only wanted to join Arsenal, and everything to do with that line. But it's finally all done. And at his unveiling, he is part of what he had to say when it was all done and dusted. He said, I just felt that it was the right club for me. What I had from Mikel, and meaning Mikel Arteta and Andrea, when I was speaking with them, and just what I've seen in the past years, how they've been playing football. When I was playing against Arsenal last season, I could really feel it. It was a really strong team and very difficult to play against. That made me choose Arsenal. And in another extended video, he does go on to say that he really didn't need much convincing. And I think for all clubs that are looking to sign players, those are the kinds of words that you want to hear. That that is a process you want to go through. That the player did not need a lot of convincing for you to sign him. And it couldn't have worked out any better for Arsenal, because we're talking about a player that almost forced a move. Almost forced a move in the sense that he protested the violation of a gentleman's agreement with his previous club in Sporting Lisbon. Now, of course, part of that is because Sporting Lisbon lost their then sporting director to Manchester City. His name does elude me, but he took that because he was the one managing player relationships. And I think the president, that's Varendas, Francesco Varendas, does deserve maybe a little bit of benefit of doubt. By the way, a former soldier, a former army guy. So you can understand his shrewdness in negotiations and being a hardliner and not bowing to pressure and those kinds of things. So perhaps in some way he could be excused that he maybe wasn't privy to the details of the gentleman's agreement that had been set by Viktor Gyokeres and the former sporting director, who then joined Manchester City. And then you had Viktor Gyokeres' agent, that's Hassan Ketanya. Sorry, I'm forgetting the pronunciation of the name, but his first name is Hassan. And offering to sacrifice his 10% commission on this deal to say, I won't be taking that up. Let me help my client get that, dream move to Arsenal. And so it took a lot for us to arrive to this, situation. Maybe Andrea Butter deserves his flowers. Of course, it's not all done and dusted. There's still a lot to do when it comes to Arsenal transfers. There's still, players that need to be moved on. And I think in a bit we're going to be speaking about Rich Nelson. There's a bunch of players that need to be moved on. There's Gabriel Jesus. There are already conversations taking place with Flamingo. Maybe we'll get to speak about that. And then possibly there could be 2 more incomings at Arsenal, or 2 or 3 more incomings. Please do not rule that out. Yes, you may think that that number is over exaggerated, but some of it is contingent on certain departures. That if those players do leave the club, then they need to make replacements in terms of the size of the squad. So do not be surprised if by the tail end of the transfer window, Arsenal have added another set of 3 players. But for now, so far, it looks like 1 or 2 players are still on the cards to come in at Arsenal. So Andrea Bata speaking about Viktor Gyokeres, he said, "We are so pleased with the excellent deal we have completed to bring in Viktor Gyokeres to the club. Victor is an exceptional talent and has consistently demonstrated he has the qualities and winning mentality required at the top level, required of a top level centre forward. His physicality, intelligence, and work ethic make him a perfect fit for our vision. We are confident Viktor Gyokeres will have a major impact on the pitch and become an important figure in our dressing room." So those were some of the words from Andrea Bata, the Arsenal sporting director. Now, here's the backdrop, the history of everything in regards to this deal, but also in the larger context in Arsenal's pursuit of a striker, which, by the way, dates to as far back as last summer. Last summer, that was 2024, Arsenal made an approach to RB Leipzig to try and sign Benjamin Sesko. Long story short, that was Edu Gaspar Dawood and his deputy, Jason Aito at the time. Long story short, they could not strike a deal. The player ended up signing a new contract because he preferred to continue with RB Leipzig for another year and to sort of, work on his further development. Then Arsenal went back in January. Remember, by January, Arsenal sporting director in Edu Gaspar Dawood had already stepped down from his role at Arsenal and was on gardening leave because he was destined to take up a position with Evangelos Marinakis. Marinakis' group, that's those that do own those do own that Olympiacos, Nottingham Forest, and I think there's another club, I think in Portugal. Is it AC Milan, something? I stand to be corrected. But yeah, a cohort of clubs. So he was going to take over role there, I think as the head of football, something like that. So he was on gardening leave. That means in January, it was Jason Aito taking charge of transfers. As you all remember, Arsenal did not make any signing in January. Kespa, hi. Babatunde. What's the meaning of Babatunde? I see you seem to have a Bayern Munich flag. Are you a Bayern Munich fan? Where are you joining us from? Good to have you on the broadcast. Kindly like the broadcast, but also consider subscribing to the channel, seeing that you're here for the very first time. So, Jason Aito he went back in, of course, with Arsenal to try and sign Benjamin Sesko in January. RB Leipzig were fighting to try and finish within the European places, which they eventually failed to get because they finished seventh on that log, and then they couldn't strike a deal, so they took a step back. They were offered an opportunity to sign Oli Watkins. That deal could not go through because Aston Villa were demanding £60 million, and that was beyond the valuation of Arsenal for the 29-year-old at the time, because they did value the player at about £40 million. So the deal could not be done. So eventually they did not sign anybody. I can see you say Playboy 13, 12, monkey. What's that supposed to mean? Is that a mean comment that you're trying to pass on? I couldn't care any less. Then Caspar, you say Messi or Kanye West. Really? That's an odd comparison. Kanye West is a musician. Messi is a footballer. Okay, give me Messi because I'm a football person, less of a music person. But thank you so much for your your feedback there. So eventually Arsenal did not sign a striker. So they come into the summer with the whole list of options. Top of that list being Benjamin Sesko, because they had done a lot of background work on him. They really wanted to get him. Mikel Arteta appreciated the player. He fitted well into the Arsenal system. By his vision, the Arsenal hierarchy were convinced by the prospect of being young, because he only turned 22 recently, I think in late May or in June, around that time. So the prospect of growing his the prospect of growing his value and that kind of thing, so it really came down to that. And they were really convinced about Benjamin Sesko. Then Edu and Jason Aito had done a lot of background work with his representatives to try and convince him how he would fit into the Arsenal project. Now, still on that list, I think that was around September. This is according to The Athletic, that around September, Arsenal started entertaining thoughts of adding Viktor Gyokeres to their shortlist, and that's when it was first reported. So you have Viktor Gyokeres, you have Benjamin Sesko as top priority, but then they still had Oli Watkins, among other options that have remained unnamed until this day when it comes to potential strikers. So really, so it came down to that. So fast forward, Andre Bata is appointed at the tail end of March. He's appointed at the tail end of March as Arsenal's new sporting director. And when he comes in, his preference was for Viktor Gyokeres, and Mikel Arteta's stance on who he should sign for a striker had been shifting because of necessity. Because by January he was very open to signing Oli Watkins. That deal did not happen. Of course, while he remained, his preference remained with Benjamin Sesko, he was open to new ideas, and that's when Andre Bata sells them on Viktor Gyokeres. They assess the situation with the entire recruitment team. They come to a certain consensus. There was not too much opposition. It wasn't a divisive opinion to say, no, I'm Team Sesko, you Team Gyokeres, and that kind of thing. So that was never the case. In any case, when you're a sporting director and you're signing the player, whatever player you're inclined to sign is going to end up working with this manager. So there has to be a consensus between the two parties to say, yeah, we are signing this player. I do agree. Let's fit that player within our system. So the overall argument came that they would push on both fronts, and then depending on how market circumstances, they would tilt whichever the wind blew most. So fast forward, they started with Benjamin Sesko exploring the deal, speaking to RB Leipzig, speaking to the players' camp. For those of you that do remember, and Benjamin Sesko's agent was invited to Arsenal's final game at the Emirates. That when they beat Newcastle by a goal to nil, that goal scored by Declan Rice. So they invited him to be in attendance. So he was well close to the Arsenal hierarchy in terms of the recruitment team. The likes of I think Tim Lewis. Then there's another I'm forgetting. He's recently been promoted to be the head of football. And that kind of thing really. So they explored the deal with RB Leipzig. RB Leipzig were unwilling to budge on their 90 million euro asking fee. Then there's agent commissions, and then apparently the players asking wage demands were significantly higher than they had hoped them to be. So negotiations went on, but there was no much breakthrough. And then Andre Bata traveled to Spain and then started having direct contacts with Sporting Lisbon. That's where the initial negotiations took place. There was not much breakthrough. Then I think at the start of July, he again flew to Portugal for further discussions. He did not return with the deal. That's the same time when we started to hear that Viktor Gyokeres was now at odds with his bosses at Sporting Lisbon because they had violated the gentleman's agreement that they had with his camp to release him for 60 million euros plus 10 million euros in add-ons, which brought the total package to about 70 million euros. And yet Sporting Lisbon were quoting 70 million euros as guaranteed fees plus 10 million euros in expected add-ons, taking the total cost of the transfer fee to 80 million euros. So we started hearing those. Then, of course, the player protested those kinds of decisions, and that's how he eventually earned himself an extended pre-season period because he refused to return. But even when that deadline came, which was July 11th, for him to return to report for training, pre-season training, the player did not return. He remained in Fortress. So it was a bit of a test situation. Negotiations were not really heading the right direction but then on the player side, things had been really, really smooth. With Viktor Gyokeres' representatives, they quickly came to an agreement on a 5-year contract, and that was in place. Then eventually, it took his agent, that's Hassan, to negate his 10% commission for Arsenal to reach a full agreement on a transfer fee in principle. And when they reached that, then there was haggling over the add-ons, the 10 million euros in add-ons. Sporting Lisbon wanted them as easily achievable as you could have them, and yet Arsenal were not willing to budge on that. So, long story short, that took about a week and a half to negotiate those add-ons, and eventually they came to an agreement, which include that every 20 games he plays for Arsenal, where he plays 45 minutes plus, Sporting Lisbon will be receiving 1.25 million euros in add-ons, up to a total of 5 million euros. So that's about, I think, up to 80 games. If my math is well with me, yes, up to 80 games. So by the time he makes 80 appearances, then Arsenal would have qualified to pay up to 5 million euros. Then there came this UEFA Champions League qualification for 4 consecutive seasons. Then for every season that Arsenal qualified for the UEFA Champions League, then they pay Sporting Lisbon 1 million euros in add-ons. Then there's the goal involvement. For every 20 goals he scores, Sporting Lisbon will receive 500,000 euros in add-ons, and so, but that's up to the tune of 1 million euros. So meaning, if he goes on to score 40 goals in his first season, then Arsenal will owe Sporting Lisbon already another €1 million in add-ons. So eventually, a deal was struck, and the player officially on Friday was given a written notice that he had been permitted to travel to London to undergo his medicals at Arsenal and complete that move. So he arrived in London yesterday, late evening on Friday, and today he underwent his medicals, and I think it was about 7 p.m. Around that time, or slightly with a couple of minutes past, that he was officially announced as a new Arsenal player. So he would don the shirt number 14, but that was the backdrop of that transfer happening on the part of Benjamin Sesko. At some point, when they had that, Arsenal's pursuit for Viktor Gyokeres was gaining traction, they tried to come back on the table to sort of, take some concessions, especially when it came to the agent commissions and his asking and his wages. But that ship had already sailed for Arsenal. They were further down the path of Viktor Gyokeres, so they did not look back, and that's why he is still an RB Leipzig player who is currently being pursued by Newcastle as we speak. So I think so far it's been a tremendous transfer window for Arsenal so far. When you look at the kinds of profiles of players that they've brought in, but even though they had already signed 5 players up until this stage, Arsenal fans were really, really not content when it came to, Arsenal fans were not really, really content with the transfer window so far they had until a striker came in. Yes, Hassani's second name is Stinkai. Yes, Stenkaya. I hope I pronounce it rightly, but that's how it's written. Stenkaya. There. So, which is very, very impressive, by the way. So, that ship had sailed, but like I was saying, Arsenal fans were not content with the transfer window so far, because they had already signed Kepa Arrizabalaga from Chelsea for £5 million. They had signed Martin Zubimendi. They signed Christian Nogard from Brentford. Martin Zubimendi coming in from Real Sociedad. They signed Noni Madueke and Christian Mosquera. Noni Madueke, of course, coming in from Chelsea, and Mosquera coming in from Valencia. That's the 21-year-old Spanish centre back. They're still not content, because for the last 2 summer transfer windows, Arsenal fans have been keen on the club bringing in a striker, and yet that had not happened. So finally it has happened, and I think it's safe to say that all parties are happy. The only hope is that he does live to the hype and that he comes in with. He has to don the shirt number 14, which comes with a whole lot of pressure in itself, but I think it's one he loves to embrace, given the historical context attached to that number, that it was made famous by none other than Thierry Henry, arguably the best player in the English Premier League era, as well as the best, Arsenal player of all time. For those of you that share the same opinion, so really, it's been quite the episode of a transfer saga, but finally that has been wrapped up. Still speaking of Arsenal, like I said, Andre Bata still has a lot of work to do, and in fact, according to multiple reports, Arsenal have now shifted their sights to trying to get a deal done for Ebeleche Eze. He does have a £60 million release clause plus £8 million in expected add-ons, are all apparently payable in 3. The £60 million payable in 3 installments, but according to some sources, those installments have to be paid within a period of 2 years, which I think would undercut Arsenal's or undercut Arsenal's, preference or anticipation. But given that, such details of the contract are oftentimes so private, Arsenal have started informal talks with Crystal Palace to try and explore a deal for the 27-year-old English playmaker. Remember, he came through the ranks of Arsenal at Hill End at the academy, although he was let go at a very, very young age. He was only 13. He ended up at teams like, I think he had a stint at Fulham, then had a stint at Ipswich before being picked up by Queen's Park Rangers. He then was sent out on loan to, I think, Wycombe to play there on loan. And then when he played, very brilliantly at Queen's Park Rangers, that's when he caught the sight of Crystal Palace, who signed him in August 2020 during that COVID period. So they signed him for about 18 million euros. So yeah, that's the player we are talking about. Can play as an attacking midfielder behind the strikers. Can play also at the left wing. Very, very capable player. Very good at dribbling. Has an eye for goal. Of course, he needs to add on his numbers when it comes to goal squad. But at least we saw how more of his capabilities last season, including that goal squad against Manchester City, as he guided the Eagles to winning the FA Cup in the finals at Wembley. So they are exploring the deal to sign, Ebelechi Eze. They would have loved to sell a player first before, wrapping up that deal, but it is not entirely contingent on them selling a player. But among the players they are looking to move on is Reece Nelson. Some initial reports had suggested that they could look to abandon Reece Nelson in a deal that brings in Ebelechi Eze, but Fulham are already in advanced talks with Arsenal to try and sign Reece Nelson. Now, apparently, Fulham want to take him on an initial season-long loan with an option or an obligation to buy. There's a lot of negotiations that still have to go on for Reece Nelson to make that switch to Fulham, where he played last season out on loan. So looks like Marco Silva is in appreciation of the England, Hell End star. But I think we are also encouraged by the fact that Reece Nelson would prefer to remain in London as opposed to moving to any other part of the UK. So because there is also interest from other clubs elsewhere. So let's keep our eyes peeled on that Reece Nelson deal, and we'll see how it will go down in the coming days. But that news was broken, I think, to us by David Austin. He's the one who broke that news, saying that Fulham were in advanced talks with Arsenal to sign Reece Nelson. Discussions for the 25-year-old are centered on a loan plus an option / obligation and significant fee or permanent. Agreement between Arsenal and Fulham are close but not done. Work needed for more to be materialized. So that's the expectation around that front. Then also we got news, this came in yesterday, that Andrea Bata is exploring a deal to sell Gabriel Jesus. And I've said this before and I'll repeat it again. Arsenal's expectation coming into the summer was always to part ways with Gabriel Jesus because his injury record has not really helped. He is not a bad player. He's a very, very good player, very dynamic player. However, his injury record makes him very unreliable, really. So in terms of being a key part of that Arsenal squad. Now, I know there's a lot of sentiments and a bit of what's the right word to use? It's actually sentiment. Really, the way about some Arsenal fans when it comes to Gabriel Jesus and Alexander Zinchenko, because these two players sort of shifted the way Arsenal's mentality when they came in. And you remember they came in, I think, in the summer of 2022. That's when they first came in. They arriving from Manchester City, having won Premier League titles over there, and so they came with that winning mentality. And when they walked into that dressing room, I remember Zinchenko speaking about this, that when we came in here, the objective was to fight and get back in the top four. But then they asked them, guys, how about going for the title? Why not? As in, why not give it a go and we'll see how it goes? We're not guaranteeing that we'll win it, but let the objective be winning the Premier League title. And ever since then, Arsenal have not looked back, because for 3 consecutive seasons that they have been at the club, they've finished third. So they brought that mentality to try and push the team, to try and motivate the rest of the squad that it is possible to push Manchester City, who are the biggest, the dominant players in the league. And for for those two occasions where they finished second, Manchester City won the Premier League title. Initially, the 2022-2023, they won the title with a margin, I think, of 5 points. And then the subsequent season, they won the title, I think, with a margin of just 2 points, for those of you that do remember, because Arsenal finished with 89 points, while Manchester City won the title with 91 points. And then last season, of course, Liverpool came and scooped away the Premier League title at the expense of Arsenal when they finished third again. So there's a bit of sentiments about those two players. Some Arsenal fans would rather they are not moved on, but Andrea Berta has to be ruthless. First of all, for example, I think Alexander Zinchenko is into the final year of his contract. There's interest from AC Milan, although his wages, he's on high wages at Arsenal, and most of his suitors are unwilling to meet the same kind of wages. Then the player also is very, very comfortable and happy within London. He would prefer to stay in London, even if it means, seeing out the remainder of his contract. And perhaps it would give him a lot of flexibility as a free agent going into next summer. Now, you remember when I said that Arsenal could sign 3 other players in the transfer window? One of those could be a left back, because that one is entirely contingent on Alexander Zinchenko. If it does leave, then Arsenal could be back in the market to find a replacement for that role. And then also there's a possibility, which is not being ruled out, that they could lose Jakub Kivio. So if they do lose Jakub Kivio, or either one of those, or even both, then they definitely have to go back in the market and find a left back. And on that note, that is why they were interested in a player like Jorel Hato. Although Chelsea are really, really pushing hard to get a deal done for Jorel Hato, they have already agreed to personal terms with the player on that front. Then, so when it comes to Gabriel Jesus, Flamengo are really, really interested. Apparently, the current proposal, already discussions have taken place between the two clubs, and I think Gabriel Jesus, according to multiple reports, is open to joining Flamengo. However, the proposal so far from Flamengo is that he joins them on a season-long loan in which they pay 50% of his wages, while Arsenal take care of 50% of his wages, because I think he's equally on very, very high wages at Arsenal, with an obligation. So it will be a loan deal with an obligation to buy for about 30 million euros, because apparently that's what Arsenal want. Flamengo have already made so many commitments. They've signed so many players. Samuel Lino from Atletico de Madrid. They've signed Emerson Royal from AC Milan. They've signed Saul Niguez from Atletico Madrid. They've signed Jorginho Reddy as a free agent from Arsenal. So they've made so many recruitments in that regard. So I do think for them financially, it may not be plausible for a permanent move, but nothing can be ruled out until this stage. So let's wait and see. Then the other players that Andrea Berta has to work on moving on is Albert Sambilo Konga, Fabio Vieira. Those are the other players that he needs to find new clubs for. The Leandro Trossard could be on the exit, and we've spoken about Arsenal's need to improve on that left wing. While Ebelechi is of interest to Arsenal, the Athletic earlier on this summer did report that their move for Ebelechi is independent of their desire to improve on the left wing. So in regards to the left wing, I would rather they move on Leandro Trossard, because he's 30 years of age, while Martinelli, still a good player, and still only 24, still has 3 years left with his current contract. That's why my preference would be Arsenal sign Rafael Leao over Rodrigo Goes. Now, I know some Arsenal fans do not agree with me on that one, but I think I would stick with that opinion. Simply because I've watched Rodrigo Goes. He's naturally more talented than Rafael Leao, but in all-roundedness, when it comes to the demands of the Premier League, there I would take Rafael Leao over Rodrigo Goes. And Arsenal fans are urging Andrea Berta to bring in Rafael Leao, but he wouldn't come cheap, because AC Milan would want a fee in the region of 80 to 90 million euros, which is essentially what Real Madrid would be demanding for Rodrigo Goes. But Rodrigo Goes would demand significantly higher wages than Rafael Leao. In fact, I've seen some reports suggesting that Arsenal have told Rodrigo Goes' camp that they are unwilling to meet his wage demands if a deal were to be done with Real Madrid. So that's everything to do with Arsenal. But tomorrow, like I said, they do have a game to play against Newcastle in Singapore. That game, of course, like we know, Alexander Isak won't be part of that, but the likes of Bruno Guimaraes, Dan Burn, Steven Botman, Anthony Gordon, Anthony Elanga, Jacob Murphy, what's his name? It's called Williams what? I'm forgetting his name. But they, Sandro Tonali, they'll be all part of that Newcastle side. I can't really anticipate much on how Mikel Arteta will assemble his team, because preseason games are, games to test out, Marco players, give younger stars a chance, and perhaps assess them whether they could be an option in the main team squad, or you send them out on loan for their further development. But one player, some three players, youngsters that are really exciting to watch is Max Dolman, then Mali Salmon in that center back role, as well as Josh Nicholas on that right flank. Then Yurian Timber, Gabriel Magalhaes, and Alexander Zichenko may not feature in that game because I didn't see them train. I saw, clips of the opening training session, but Alexander Zichenko was in, gym sneakers, was seated somewhere on the sidelines. Gabriel Magalhaes had an issue, so you remember he missed that game against AC Milan, in which Arsenal won by 1-0. So it was precautionary. So I do not think he will be risked again in this game. Then Yurian Timber, we all know he's just recovering from that surgery that he underwent on his ankle at the tail end of last season. So those could be out of the matchday squad. But otherwise, all the others are options that could start. In the previous game, the likes of Christian Nogard started. Declan Rice, I think, started alongside Ethan Nwaneri in that midfield. Then, of course, Martin Zubimendi came in, Mikel Merino came in, as well as Martin Odegaard. But Christian Nogard was really good, looked good on the ball. Max Dolman came in for Bukayo Saka, I think, in the second half, really looked impressive. Then Martin Zubimendi looked impressive for those 45 minutes. Really, Kepa Arrizabalaga looked good in goal. Of course, William Saliba looked good. V1B. You remember that when Rafael Leao goes on the break. Very some impressive performances on that day. Then today, fast forward, AC Milan today played Liverpool in Hong Kong. And that game was won by AC Milan by 4-2. I mean, the game in itself was, first of all, impressive to watch. I think it felt less of a preseason friendly than it felt more of an actual match. Very quite competitive. I thought it was a bit of a balanced game, especially in the first half. Although in the second half, again, Liverpool will only have themselves to blame because of the mistakes that they committed that saw them concede those goals. Especially, I think it was the third goal that was scored by Okafor there. So it wasn't really pretty. It wasn't pretty at all. So I think Mamadashvili will look forward to correct those mistakes as sooner rather than later. But Rafael Leao opened the scoring, again going on a counter-attack, and Ibrahim Konate with Virgil van Dijk failed to catch up. Virgil van Dijk almost got to him, but his attempted block didn't yield any fruition as he blasted that ball past Arsene Wenger in goal. And it was 1-0. Then Dominic Szoboszlai scored a very impressive goal. The way he slotted that ball past Mike Maignan in goal for AC Milan was just a sweet finish. Because it was first of all from distance, but the way he loops that ball beyond the reach of the goalkeeper to drop it into the back of the net, I thought was really impressive. Then in the second half, Ruben Loftus-Cheek scored to make it 2-1. Then Noah Okafor, that was Ruben Loftus-Cheek goal, came in the 52nd minute. I think it was a Rafael Leao assist. I stand to be corrected. Then Okafor in the 59th minute. That's when Mamadashvili fumbled that ball. And it was a back pass to him. He fumbled that ball, and then Noah Okafor went on to score. So then Liverpool pulled one back through Cody Gakpo. It was a header. And then while those celebrations were still lingering in the minds of those Liverpool fans that filled that stadium, Noah Okafor picked his brace on the other side. So very impressive game that there was to watch. I think things didn't entirely click well for Florian Wirtz in overall, but he didn't look, I'm not saying he looked bad. because I think he conceded possession before AC Milan scored that second goal. So, but either the second or third goal. So, but overall, I think Liverpool won't be really, really fast by the result. But there are some positive performances when it came to their side. There is a youngster who came through the ranks at Chelsea, a Liverpool youngster, England international, that I thought was really, really good in that game. I think it was Ngumoha. Ngumoha. I think that's the player. I thought was really, really, really good. So, but yeah, very, very impressive stuff from from that Liverpool side. But let's wait and see. Then Jeremy Frimpong again coming forward. He looked really sharp. He looked really, really sharp. But by the mistake of Georgi Mamadashvili, I do not think there's much to really fault those players for. Maybe Virgil van Dijk could have done better in that 1v1 against Rafael Leao before he beat Ramses Baker from a very tight angle. So, but yeah, that was the game for Liverpool. So Arsenal are up against Newcastle tomorrow in Hong Kong, and then in Singapore, and then they will fly to Hong Kong, where they will play Tottenham Hotspur later. But Liverpool also will equally have their own engagements coming up very soon before they return to the UK, where they will play. They'll have another preseason game before playing Crystal Palace on August the 10th in the Community Shield. That will be, of course, the curtain riser for the Premier League season before it kicks off on the 15th of August, again with Liverpool taking on AFC Bournemouth. So yeah, that's the expectation at Liverpool. Liverpool remain very, very actively pursuing a deal for Alexander Isak. All they are waiting for is Newcastle to open that door to say we are open for a bid. Yes, they still have a game to play over there in Hong Kong. It will be against Yokohama FM. That's Liverpool. That game will come on Wednesday, July 30th. And then I think they will return to the UK. That's when they will play Athletic Bilbao in the UK on Monday, 4th August. Because Arsenal, after playing Tottenham Hotspur on July 31st, will come back in the UK to play in the Emirates Cup. They'll play against Villarreal, and then that will be, I think, on the around the 4th or 5th of August, and then they'll play Bilbao, I think, on the 9th, around that time, before they also wait to face Manchester United in the opening weekend of the Premier League. So that's all that there is when it comes to Liverpool and Arsenal. Then Manchester United are in action tonight. That game, unfortunately, is going to come at 2 a.m. leading into Sunday. They are playing against West Ham United. They are in Chicago. Yeah, the game I think is going to be. Actually, the game is going to be played at the MetLife Stadium in New Jersey. Yes, where we did witness the finals of the recently concluded FIFA Club World Cup. So Manchester United are over there. I thought. By the way, I thought Ruben Amorim lied to us. Then the other game that is ongoing is between Everton and AFC Bournemouth. Those ones are equally out there in the US. That's where they are having their pre-season, and they'll have engagements against Manchester United. Both teams, by the way, Man United will play Everton, and they will also play AFC Bournemouth at some point. I thought Ruben Amorim lied to us because he said something like this, that if Manchester United fail to get the right valuation of their players, Jadon Sancho, Anthony, and Alejandro Garnacho, maybe if we go to add on Tyler Malacia, that if they fail to get the right valuation for those players in the market, then they will stay as Manchester United players and they will be reintegrated in the team. Now, I do not think you would reintegrate players into a team, players that you've even failed to give the benefit of doubt or the chance to be part of the group for preseason training. I do not think you'll be looking to do that unless he's saying they will retain them and push them to the reserve team, because even the reserve team is that of Manchester United. But I thought that was all PR. I thought that was all PR in his submission. So, but anyways, it is what it is. But that game between Everton and AFC Bournemouth is still goalless. The second half is getting underway. And Don Iraola has a lot to do because they've already lost two players that were significant to their backline. Actually, three. Kepa Arrizabalaga was with them on loan, by far their best goalkeeper. Of course, they've signed George Petrovic from Chelsea for £25 million. They've lost Milos Kakes to Liverpool. They've lost Dean Howson to Real Madrid. They could lose Ilya Zabadi, the 22-year-old Ukrainian centre-back, to either of Tottenham Hotspurs or PSG. Both clubs are interested in signing him, although the player's preference apparently would be to join PSG because he has already agreed, a long-term contract with them. But the clubs are still in negotiations, so let's wait on that. So I think that's one too many changes, which I believe, and we spoke about this in our morning broadcast when somebody put it forward that he thought that Bournemouth may struggle next season and could be relegated. While I didn't agree that they may be relegated, I did agree that they will struggle because it feels like there's going to be one too many changes in that squad for Bournemouth. The goalkeeper Neto, who was on loan at Arsenal last season, is back in goal for Bournemouth. He is the one in goal. So I will look to continue, following the updates from that game, subsequently. But yeah, that's so far. That's been the situation today. Of course, when it came to transfer speculation, I do know that Nottingham Forest want to go back in at Bologna with an improved offer to try and sign Danny Ndoye, who Napoli are trying to pursue. Napoli have been offered the chance to sign Raheem Sterling, but that has not yielded much. Then the plan has been confirmed for James Trafford to undergo medical tests on Monday before joining as a new Manchester City player on a 5-year contract with an option to extend for a further year. Again, this is another miss for Newcastle because Newcastle were really pushing hard to sign the 22-year-old England goalkeeper, but it looks like Manchester City have beaten them to the punch to sign their own player because remember they sold him for about £13 million to Burnley with an option, with a buyback option. Although the valuation of that was about £40 million, they managed to get him back for under that because according to David Ornstein of the Athletic, he said James Trafford total package worth Burnley what would prove a record total transfer fee for a British goalkeeper surpassing Jordan Pickford at £30 million. Newcastle reached same ballpark as Manchester City, but Manchester City edged Newcastle to the 22-year-old. So looks like the total package is going to be above £30 million for the young goalkeeper. He's a player that I did watch a bit when he was playing with Burnley, when they were still under the charges of Vincent Kompany. In the 2023-2024 campaign, he was a very good goalkeeper, both with his hands and his feet, but the entirety of the playing style of the team that committed so many numbers high, their defensive work was really poor, so it left him exposed. So he shipped in quite so many goals, but I think he's going to be a big miss for Scott Parker, who is the manager currently at Burnley. But Burnley will be in the market for a new goalkeeper. Whether they will try to push for Stefan Ortega remains to be seen. But Manchester City will be expected to move on Stefan Ortega, and indeed he wants to move on to find a club where he can play. He can be a starter really. So that will be his preference. Then this is also a bit of breaking news. It's an exclusive again from David Austin, has come in about 18 minutes ago, saying Nottingham Forest in talks with Morgan Gibbs-White about signing a new contract. 25-year-old midfielders exiting terms expire in June 2027. And Tottenham Hotspurs pushed to secure the England international, but poised to stay in huge boost for Nottingham Forest. So again, I think this would be really good news for Nottingham Forest. First of all, because they've already lost Anthony Elanga, who they are trying to replace. They are going to be playing in either of the UEFA Europa League or the UEFA Conference League. Because remember, they qualified for the UEFA Conference League, but they appealed to, or they petitioned UEFA over Crystal Palace's breach of the club ownership rules, for which Crystal Palace were found guilty for having a shareholder in John Textor, who also owns shares, who a majority shareholder at Olympic Lyon, and yet they were going to play in the same competition. So they were found in breach for that. They ought to have made changes before March the 1st. And Crystal Palace, and following that, reaching that decision, Nottingham Forest were elevated to the UEFA Europa League, and then Crystal Palace were relegated to the UEFA Conference League. Remember, Crystal Palace qualified for the UEFA Europa League after beating Man City to win the FA Cup. So, but now Crystal Palace have appealed to the Court of Arbitration for Sport on that decision, because they argued that John Textor had nothing whatsoever to do when it came to the day-to-day running of the club. That's at Crystal Palace. So they feel a bit of an injustice that has been done to them by UEFA. But let's wait and see what the final decision will be from UEFA when it comes to, from the Court of Arbitration for Sport, before Nottingham Forest is confirmed to be participating in the UEFA Europa League next season. Then Emerson Royal has officially signed as a new Flamingo player. Their total package, is about 9 million euros. There. Remember, by the way, this is another deal that was a hijack move. Flamingo basically hijacked the Emerson Royal deal. It was destined for move to Besiktas in Turkey, but that deal was hijacked. Then Everton are in advanced talks to sign Malik Fofana from Olympic Lyon. Official bid has been submitted, and clubs are now in direct talks with Everton. Also in contact with the players' camp. I remember Everton are also trying to push to sign the 19-year-old winger Tyler Dibling from Southampton. Very, very exciting player, a prospect of a player. Looks like by the Everton are making the right moves. I think so far in the transfer window they managed to renew Idris Gana Gueye's contract. Of course, they've lost some players, the likes of Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and I think Abdoulaye Diakore, but they're making really, really the right moves to strengthen that side. Of course, they may not get it all their way through, but a player like Malik Fofana has been on shortlists for Chelsea, for Arsenal, and I think Liverpool. Malik Fofana, those are 3 clubs that have inquired about the possibility of signing the player. So if Everton do secure his services, good youngster, only I think 20 years of age, Canadian international, Malik Fofana, very exciting player from Olympic Lyon. But let's wait and see if they can wrap up that deal. Then Girona have signed Thomas Lemar from Atletico de Madrid on a season-long loan, or they've reached an agreement to sign him on a season-long loan, with Girona taking 50% of his wages, while Atletico Madrid will continue to pay the other 50% of his paycheck. So then Chelsea are also in advanced talks to sign Xavi Simons from RB Leipzig. Negotiations with the players' camp and the club-to-club also continue to try and find a deal for the 22-year-old Dutchman to join the Blues. He's keen on the move. They also continue to push for Joel Hato from Ajax. That's the defender. Then Darwin Núñez was omitted from Liverpool's squad that faced AC Milan because the expectation is that he will leave this summer. Same happened for Luis Diaz, because Bayern Munich are in talks with Liverpool to try and sign the 28-year-old Colombian international. So plenty of deals happen. Then Vanja Milinkovic-Savic did arrive in Napoli to undergo his medicals ahead of completing that 21 million euro move from Torino. So very, very good towering goalkeeper there. So then Tottenham do have genuine interest in signing Joao Paulinho from Bayern Munich. Remember, he joined Bayern Munich, I think, about a season and a half ago or 2 seasons ago, joining them from Fulham. So, but there could be some disparity in valuation. Then Juventus maintain active talks with PSG to try and sign Randon Colomwani on a permanent deal. And so new round of talks will take next week. Remember, this is a player that was signed from, I think, RB Leipzig, quite expensively, but things did not work out well for him at PSG. but we'll wait and see how things will develop in the coming days. Then quickly, let's look at what the latest is from the transfer rumor mill and gossip and speculation. This is according to BBC Sport. It's a compilation by BBC Sport. So Manchester United and Manchester City are both interested in Paris Saint-Germain's 26-year-old goalkeeper Gianluigi Donnarumma. That's according to L'Equipe in France. With the League One side lining up Lille's French goalkeeper Luca Chivalier at 23 as a potential replacement. Then Galatasaray are also set to make an approach for Gianluigi Donnarumma, who is about to enter the final year of his contract. Yes, and then Arsenal are hoping to quickly seal a deal for Eberechi Eze. That one we discussed. That's according to the Independent. While Everton are in discussions with Bayern Munich over a 7.8 million move for 19-year-old Moroccan left back Ahmad Anou. That's according to the Athletic. Then Flamengo, we've spoken about their interest in Gabriel Jesus, while Benfica are really pushing hard to try and reach a deal or an agreement for Joao Felix. The player has already agreed to personal terms with Benfica. He would love to return to Benfica. Still only 25 years of age. He wants to work with Bruno Lage once again. But Chelsea also want to include a significant future sell-on clause worth about 40 to 50 million. 40 to 50% of a future sell-on clause. Remember, he's still contracted at Chelsea until June 2031. So very long-term contract. Then we've spoken about Fulham's interest in Arsenal's, Reece Nelson. Then Everton being in talks for Belgian winger Malik Fofana. Actually, it's Belgian, not Canadian, as I earlier mentioned. That was a mishap. Then the Toffees have already made an official bid. So let's wait and see. Then Manchester United and Burnley have joined Brentford, Southampton, and Borussia Dortmund in the hunt to sign Metis 18-year-old Senegalese forward Idrissa Gueye. That's according to the Sun. While Chelsea are set to subsidize England winger Raheem Sterling's wages in order to complete the 30-year-old's move to Fulham. Then West Ham are considering a move for Werder Bremen's Roman Schmidt, who is valued at about £13 million. Aston Villa and Fulham are also monitoring the 25-year-old Austrian attacking midfielder, while West Ham and Benfica are planning to make bids for Cagliari's 24-year-old Italian forward Roberto Piccoli, who is valued at about £26 million. Leeds are willing to pay £28 million plus add-ons for Feyenoord's Igor Paxio, but face competition from Olympique Marseille and Roma for the 26-year-old Brazilian forward. That's according to Sky Sports. Then also, Brentford have closed the door for the exit of Yohan Wissa. Now, the player has threatened to go on strike or to protest that decision because apparently he also had a gentleman's agreement after the departure of Ivan Toney that if a suitable offer came for him, he would be allowed to leave for about £26 million. Now, remember, Brentford value the player north of £40 million. In fact, some sources have gone ahead to report that they want at least £50 million for the 28-year-old DRC Congo forward. Now, Newcastle made another bid, a second bid, in the excess of £30 million, which was turned down with, Brentford closing that door because they do not, like I said, it's not really ideal. They wouldn't want to lose two of their best forwards in Brian Mbeumo, who they've already lost to Manchester United, and then lose Yohan Wissa when you've already lost Christian Nogard, you've lost Thomas Frank as the manager, you've lost Mark Fleck, the goalkeeper, and you have Keith Andrews, who is, trying to learn his way because this is his first job in management and things of that nature. So really, let's wait and see how things will develop on that front as well in the coming days. But as far as today is concerned, it's been AC Milan's day in beating Liverpool. It's been Arsenal's day with Viktor Gyokeres. Surprisingly, they pushed out the entire interview, about 8 minutes of it. Today, they released video, of course. Then they put out, that short clip where the player says, "Hi Gunners, good to be here," or "Really happy to be here," etc., etc. That's one that is sponsored by Google Pixel, and things like that. So things have really, really moved fast. Then Real Madrid could offer Rodrigo, Camavinga, and 40 million euros at open negotiations with Man City for Rodri. I think those reports are wide of the mark, really. That's too much. That's too much. I would take that with a pinch of salt. But let's wait and see. Nova bro, hi bro, it's me again. How are you? I'm all right, my brother. Good to have you on the podcast. Kindly like the podcast. It's a pleasure to have you back. Thank you so much for the love and support. I do appreciate you that every time you have a moment, you do spare a couple of minutes to be with us for purposes of supporting this channel. I do not take your love and support for granted, really. Much appreciated. So, really, of course, there's more speculation than what we've discussed. But like I said, Newcastle trying really, really hard to sign Benjamin Sesko. So let's wait and see if they will get a deal done. After that, then let's Bruno. Hi Bruno. Bruno is another usual suspect on this channel. I do not think Bruno is a football fanatic, as some of us are, but every time he has a moment to spare, he is always with us here. He comes and, says hello. Sometimes he runs away quickly. Sometimes he stays for a couple of more minutes to be with us. So Bruno, thank you so much for always supporting the Football Tribe YouTube channel. Much appreciated to you as well. You and Nova Bro, I really, really do appreciate you as some of our usual suspects on this channel. So, but guys, let's think for a second. In the work of Viktor Gyokeres, signing for Arsenal, and I know they are still in the market to, make more signings. How do you think Arsenal will assemble next season? Bruno, I've seen your comment, but I won't read it out loud. But yeah, you're good with dropping a joke or two every now and then. But Manchester United equally remain in the market for a striker, but I think slowly by slowly they could be coming to terms to the fact that they could start the season without a striker, a new striker, even though they remain interested in signing Oli Watkins. Now, when it comes to Oli Watkins, Aston Villa are reluctant to let him go, especially bearing in mind that they yet to sign a replacement. And remember, they lost Jean Duran to Al Nassr in January. Al Nassr have since loaned him to Fenerbahce on a one-season long loan. So yeah, Bruno says, money. What you're praying for money? I have to sadly head out, man. Nova bro, thank you so much. It's nice to know how you are doing. Have a nice day. It's already night for us. In fact, it's 25 minutes past the hour of midnight, so we are already into our Sunday. It's 27th already for us here. So, but thank you so much for the wishes. God bless you too as well in your respective endeavors. So, anyways, I was asking, how do you think Arsenal will assemble when it comes to in the work of signing Viktor Gyokeres? Of course, given the financial outlay, I have every reason to believe he'll be starting ahead of Kai Havertz. But knowing Mikel Arteta's obsession, literally, with Kai Havertz, I wouldn't be surprised if it is Kai Havertz that starts as the lead striker at the start of the season, or if he finds for him a slot in midfield, which will be significantly difficult, by the way. Otherwise, it will come really under criticism. But let's wait and see how they will assemble in the coming season. Otherwise, it's been a pleasure doing this with you guys. Thank you so much for being part of today's broadcast. I wish you nothing but the very best and a wonderful Sunday and the rest of the weekend. We will meet again tomorrow. I do not know whether we will do a morning broadcast, but I think we will explore that option. But we'll be speaking tomorrow, most definitely. Just turn your notifications on and you'll be notified once we do go live. Otherwise, it's been a pleasure doing this with you. Have yourselves a wonderful rest of the night. Thank you so much, Caspar, Playboy. Although you came in with some mean comments, I still did appreciate you for being part of the podcast. Nova Bro, Bruno, and every single one of you that liked the broadcast, those that joined, but did not like the broadcast, did not send in a comment, I still appreciate you for keeping your presence with us here on the channel. For those of you that do watch our broadcasts much later after they've ended, I would not take your time for granted. We do appreciate you a great deal. So thank you so much for loving and supporting, Footballtribe UG. Let's continue to subscribe to the channel for the newcomers so that you help me to 2,000 subscribers. Otherwise, have a blessed night. Let's meet again tomorrow. Bye-bye.